The next thing is an earring stand. There's a single and a triple. Now I make them as singles, doubles and triples. What I'm going to do is I'll just show you how we prepare the single, make the single, and then all it means is instead of this, for a double, you need the finial on there and you make that little bit. And then if you want a triple, you put the finial on top and make another stem and a base. I'll explain that as I go along. But okay, earring stands. The first thing I do, I'm just going to put a glue gun on, and this can be heating up while I do the first bit. Right, the glue gun's on. I'll explain that when I come to do it. Now, when I make my earring stands, it might seem strange, but I make the spindle first.
When you make these, Don, do you make them to sell or do you make them for
Yes.
friends and family?
Now, I suppose in my time, I must have made about 100 of them. I did 100 total in different sizes at the craft fairs. I've been doing craft fairs since the late 80s, and I'm really just giving up now. Right, first of all, between centres, don't like that. I'll have to push that in a bit more. It won't go anymore, bugger. It will do for today. I'm being a bit cagey because it's wobbling a bit. Yeah, a bit more. I'm going to put a 1/2 inch spigot on this end. What I'm going to do, I've got a face plate here. The glue gun has heated up, and I'm just going to clear the old glue off, which all the former I've had I forgot to do. Right, what I've got is a face plate, and it's got a blue ring round it. And all I'm going to do is take this piece of wood and I'm going to glue it on there. I'm afraid I'm just out of shot putting 4 little fillets round the side and switch the gun off. Right, back to square one. I've now got my calipers set at 1/2 inch. My calipers, as opposed to calipers. With the fact that I've welded on a washer, it allows much better to grip and size, because these will tend to dig in, and you've only got a very small point on your caliper, whereas you've got quite a large piece and it's still only going to be hitting on the center, but it's round and can roll around that. Whereas if you set this one to 1/2 inch, it will still do the same thing, but I find that trying to use it gives you a bite in. So hence why I changed and put a set of washers on one for the smaller work. And the other thing I'll show you in a minute when I take this off, because I've got to turn this round now. I'm going to bring the tailstock up so that I can center it. And I'm just off the timber. Just off the timber in the chuck jaws. Now the next thing is that you need to know is that the length of this spindle, what doing the ruler? Does anybody else have that problem? Everything falling on the floor?
It must be a demonstration, Don. It has to be. That's the reason.
Right. The spigot on this needs to be 3.5. So there we are. Again, it's a 1/2 inch spigot on this end. Just screw that up. Now we'll make the design on the piece. I'm just going to round that slightly. I'm going to come in about there. And put a bit of shape into the spindle. I'm just undercutting that on the face of the piece. And I'm just going to come down here shaping it off as I go. Back to the spindle master. Just defining this bit at the moment. Right. Oh dear. Oh well, I won't. That's gone off, so I'll have to leave that. But I should show. I'll make another one tomorrow. What I do now is I drill a 1/4 inch hole. I won't bother to sand this because it's broken. Unless I can just repair that, I'll have a look in a minute. I've drilled a 1/4 inch hole. Now, when I make the finial, I shall have a 1/4 inch spigot with a 1/2 inch spigot, so that when I put them together, at least they should be centralizing themselves with the 1/4 inch hole that you've drilled and the 1/4 inch spigot on the finial. Does that make sense? Right. I'm just see if I can save this very quickly. If not, at least you know how it goes together. No, it's going to be too much, I think. It's a pity you can't see my body going round, but I haven't got the setup for that. I might have saved it. I'll have a look. Just very quickly sand it.
So Don, there was a question on the chat about how do you sharpen the spindle, Master?
How do you sharpen it? With
How do
difficulty.
you sharpen it?
With difficulty. Right. Hi, Spindle Master. Okay. Diamond file. And just on the front. But I have 2 hide hair mops. And what I do is, when the mop's going around, I polish the other side with the mop. And that's what I did this morning. So you get this very highly polished surface. It does help. It gives you a nice finish. It's not like the other tools. It really does give a surface. As you can see, I've hardly sanded that. And I used it at the end. I'll just put this on here. Always wipe the excess off because it saves you getting it on your glasses. Right. So there's the spindle. Now, the reason I've done that first is because of the next operation. So I've got to take this chuck off. We'll only come back to that when we want to make the finial. I'll do the next piece and then you'll bear with me while I just change cameras again to show you something else. Right, this is the base of the earring stand.
You might want to adjust your camera just slightly.
Yeah, I just knocked it, Bert. Yeah. I'll, before I start, I shall do that. Just going to use a small tool here. Now, bear in mind, this is only glued on. I have a set of calipers or dividers, which are set to the dimension of my chucking point. Bear with me, I want to take the end livestock out. Making my chucking point. I'm going to just relieve the base here slightly, not from the rim, but about half an inch in. That will mean to say that the only bit that's touching the dressing table will be the outer edges.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, the other thing I do with these is, do you have the little plastic buttons that you put on your kitchen cabinet doors to stop, to make them soft close? Well, I use those and I put 3 at a 120-degree angle round one of these, which does 2 things. One, it takes the wood off the surface of the other wood, plus the fact it doesn't slide around. I'm just embezzling the back. I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the tool work, but not what's happening. Right. Now, I don't know if you've noticed anything yet, but I haven't put the tenon. I've only made a hole where the chucking point's going to be. If you make a mistake and you put that tenon in there or for your chuck, and you then got to take it down, you're making that chucking point much bigger because you're taking it down beyond your. Now I've got a little tool here set at the exact angle to make my tenon for my chuck. Oh, well, that'll come up. Just gonna, because once I turn this round, I can't put it back on again. The glue just held that on with no problem. Take this off. I used on this the chucking ring and just a piece of plywood. I face it off and I use that for where you don't want to put a hole in the. You know what I've done? Bear with me. I've got to change the chucks again. I used the wrong size. This is where I'll explain why I make the pillar first. Where's my monster tool? I'm going to use my big 1/2-inch bowl gouge. I tell you what, I don't know what the wood is, but you think a cat had been in here and done his number ones. Oh, it does smell. I shaped that slightly, and what I didn't do before I turn the rest round, on Thursday at coffee hour, the fire brigade turned up here and they wanted to put a smoke alarm in the garage. And then they realised it was a bit dusty. Well, I'm glad they didn't, because that would have gone off just then. Right, I'm just going to face this off. Now, at this point, I'm only interested in making certain that this edge here is faced off, because now I've got to put a 1/2 inch hole in this piece. Hopefully this will fit. Not quite. It's got to be a bit taken off of there. I'll be back in a second. I've only just gone to the bandsaw. Now, the reason I did the spindle first is to make certain that whatever size spindle you've done, in case you've had to reduce it or anything, you can have a pencil mark to show you where that spindle is. So when you come to do the next piece, and what I do with my earring stands, they're not just for hang droppers, they're also for studs. So I start I'm keeping my arm to my body and I'm using my body to twist round. Except now, I've gone the other way. I don't use fingernails very often, but when I do, now the last thing to do before we sand and polish is just to I can go down a bit more on there. Right, that's lovely. Just got to sand and polish. I find this system that I've got here with the sandpaper is so helpful. You don't have to stop and think. You just pick it up and away you go. This will look backwards, but I don't have to look and open it up and see what it is. When I put it in these tubes, I know that it's 100, 120, 180, 240, 320, 400. I just have to take it out and take a piece off and put it back again. I haven't got to look to see what that particular roll of paper is before I tear a piece off. Back to the good old when I cut this yesterday, I cut this piece of wood for the finial. And I thought, that's funny. That was a funny sound. And when I looked at it, there's a screw right in the middle, but you couldn't see it on the outside of the piece of wood I was cutting, either side of it. So the screw was somehow built in the grown into the wood as it's been growing, which was damned annoying because it messed up the saw blade. Right, I'm going to take that off and I'm going to show you what I do. Now, I've already partially drilled the next part, but that's a bit loose. That wasn't a ½ inch, but there's the first part. We can make that better. Right, I'm going to move over to the drill. So I'm going to change cameras and explain over there. Right, what we have here, you see the jig?
Yep, we can see the jig. Yes, we can.
Right, once I finish drilling, I'll show you a bit more of it. So what I've done is I drilled the first, this is a ½ inch hole in here. Yes? I can't see the computer, unfortunately. So there's a ½ inch hole, and I'll explain that in a moment. So I drill the first hole, and I put a drill in. I then drill round. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see that. Yes, you're going down the hole. Yep.
Now, I don't go all the way through.
How far do you go into the wood?
About halfway.
Okay.
Now, at that point, I will take the pin out and put it in the other side. Change back cameras now. Getting quite good at this.
Yeah.
Right, now the jig is made up of a piece of copper laminate, which I used in printed circuit boards when I was in manufacturing. And what I did was, I got a hold of a piece of this material. I drilled a ½ inch hole through it. I then made a dowel on the lathe with a center point and fitted the ½ inch hole over that spigot so it was level with the face, and then using dividers in that center point, I drew the circle, and then I divided that circle into 24 and very gently drilled the 24 holes. I then removed it from the waste piece of material and I made myself this little bung which sits in there, and that goes in there, and then you can drill the 24 holes. Now, the next part of the operation is again homemade. I don't know if it'll fit this chuck. I'll try it before I take it off. Yes, it will. And I fix that on that. Oh, come on. Half-inch hole should go in. Trusty old Allen key. I put it on so that all the holes are on the face. Because I'm going to face this off first. I see. Oop. See if I can move it. At the moment, this is a bit Heath Robinson. Oh. I'm facing off the face of where the holes are, first of all. Very gentle pressure. Little bit of undercut near the hole. That's it. You sand and polish that now. I mean, luckily, the finial isn't too bad. This will be the longest part of it because you've got to be very careful now. No, I've got to do a bit more on there. We got a nasty split in there. Didn't show up until I did that. That's it. That's done. Start again. A drinking straw. Blow the holes out. Right. That's a little bit loose. It is a kind of a collet chuck, yes, but with what it is, it's a spigot with a countersunk hole and 4 saw cuts, so that when you put the countersunk Allen key in, it opens and springs it open for you. Now, I'm not too worried about turning it round at the moment. I want to get to those holes. There's the holes coming. And once I get to there, I can then define my final shape. Right. Get my pencil. I know that I can go to that point in taking this down. I'm trying to get to that pencil line. Just a little bit more. For some no reason, it's gone off up square. I think it's probably the paper at the back. I'm going to have to remove that, otherwise, if you have a look, it's got thick here and thin there. Take this bit of tape off. I think the reason is I made this to a Forstner bit, and what I used to drill the hole was an ordinary twist drill. That's better. Right. You just got to do that carefully because you don't want to split the holes. Right. Whoops. Happy with that. The rim wants to be about an eighth of an inch thick and about an eighth of an inch from the edge, 3/16, something like that from the edge, 1/8 of an inch. Just blow the dust out. I'm going to have to make another spigot because that is too loose. Far too loose. Where are we there? But that's the earring with a very loose spigot. As I say, I wanted my 1/2 inch gauge, proper gauge. But that's it without the finial. I'm going to now turn the spigot spindle for the earring stand that we made, and I'm just going to start by turning take it down to half an inch or so. The old 1/2 inch going to just check that that fits in a 1/2 inch hole.
Yeah.
So that fits. So now, yeah, I'm going to put that back on again and I'm going to take my depth gauge, which I've already set to the depth that I want it, for the 1/2 inch dowel, because the other piece I'm going to take down to a 1/4. Right, I'm going to switch on, but right, I'm going to torque and not turn. I'm going to turn this down to a 1/4. Still going to take it down to a 1/4. I'll explain why in a moment. Don't want it too sloppy. I'm just going to change cameras. Can you see what I'm going to? So here we are with the piece that we made. Now I'm going to check the dowel that I've got that fits into there. Right, that's a very good fit. I just want to undercut the base of the dowel. To shape the base, I'm now going to reverse the piece on the chuck, put that into place, bring the tailstock up for safety point of view, and also to put it into center. There we are. I have two different chucks. One opens it one way, the other one opens it the other way. Makes it very difficult to remember which is which. Just move the rest a little bit. Just understand that. I'm going to start to make the finial. And as I go along, and there's the finial made using the 3/8 spindle gouge. Going to sand it, polish it, and then, all being well, just sanding it down, going through the different grit. Put some sander sealer, cellulose sander sealer, bit of paper toweling, take off the surplus, bit of muslin. That's the finial. I'm going to change cameras. Getting good at this. My glue stick, my pot of glue. Sun's come out. Now the reason for the 1/4-inch spigot is, if you remember from the original demo, I drilled a 1/4-inch hole in the end of the spigot before I turned it to the 1/2 inch. So there's the 1/4-inch hole you can see in there. There's the 1/4 inch on there with the 1/2 inch. There we are. The finished product. So that is the earring stand.